Alright, so boom. In this video, I'm going to talk about, or at least I'm going to try, I'm going to try to talk about Steve's stances and his stance transitions and doing all of this and all of that. Just talking about his stances and his strings. It's one of the most important things to learn with this character. It might be the most important thing because there are so many times where people that I'm fighting against get a good read on, when I do something like this, which this is all highs, just to jump right into it. This is the first string. It's all highs. You can duck the last two hits. And I get punished for it a good amount of the time, which is why I rarely do flicker one down one. Because people love ducking Steve's stance pressure. Why is it important to utilize these stances so frequently and mix up all of your timing on pretty much all of your attacks and throwing in a bunch of different moves? Well, Steve's mix-ups are completely different from like a 50-50 base character like Kazuya or fucking Kazuya. Like the Mishimas as a whole. He's very different because he doesn't use lows to mix you up. His mix-ups are, if you don't duck any of the highs, Steve's always gonna have a turn. But if you do duck the highs, there's a chance you could punish him, or there's a chance that you could get hit with, one of his mids, which then he would just take his turn back. Which, it's not the most rewarding thing, considering if you guess wrong with someone like Nina or Jin or Fang or Drag, you die, quite literally. But it makes Steve so much fun to play because it gives you that satisfaction of, okay, I'm constantly mixing him. Like, I don't know how many times, like me and my boys, we call this the Seeger. Because if you know Seeger, he's a very talented Steve player, and he utilizes Steve's wall pressure completely different from anyone I've ever seen. Like, he does the wall grab into 1-1-2, and if you don't duck, he'll keep doing it over and over. But if you do duck, he'll throw in this, and he'll throw in this stomp, and he'll throw in 3-1 forward 1-1. Like, it's such a unique and satisfying feeling when all of that works, and you're not taking much risk, because a lot of this stuff it recovers fast. So it's a really good way to utilize Steve's strongest strength, which is his safeness and his whiff recovery, because it's extremely hard to punish this character. But in the neutral, where there's no wall, it's kind of different because your opponent has so many different ways that they can move. The first thing is utilizing the spin, because people do not press when you spin. This is one of the scariest stances to press into, because I don't have heat on, but this is a heat engager, and this is a high crushing low, which is kind of evasive. Sometimes it evades mids in a certain direction, but it's kind of hard to keep track of this unless they react to it. But let's say I don't want to do any of those options, and I just throw out like flicker into a spin. Look at the plus frames if the jab hits. Plus 28, plus 20, plus 22, plus 24. It varies depending on how fast you spin after the flicker jab connects. And I think on block it does the same thing. Yeah, it does the same thing, but it's just less frames because, it's blocked. But this is a great tool. This is a great tool to close distance with your opponent. Because with Steve, you really want to get close and personal, because that's when you kind of have, you know, your stomp, which the stomp is not a lot better than what it is on paper, but just to have a +8 low that goes into Lionheart for you to utilize more of your mix-ups from that stance, it just adds on to how good this character's mix-ups can be if, you know, you actually have a turn to do them. But yeah, this spin, I use this spin just throwing out an empty spin sometimes, just so I can get closer to them. And what makes it even more special is that you can hold forward and go into Peekaboo. So you don't even have to do this low. You can do like, you could do something like this. This is really good. And I need Steve players to use this more, because you're not gonna get away with just doing, you know, dash up, or just like dash up stomp or dash up low like that. It's too obvious. So like a proper boxer, you want to mask some of your moves with other stances and other transitions. Let's say Steve decides to throw out this fucking nutty ass orbital, and you don't want to, it's -14, so let's say you don't want to use heat, but you want something like, you want to continue your turn after this. You can just do 2-1 into flicker and then continue your peekaboo pressure like that, because you'll take your punish. They can't press here, they can't power crush or anything, because 2-1 is +14 if you go into flicker. So you take your punish and then you go into your pressure. And the good, now this is probably the wrong game to say this, but the good thing is, if the flicker jab counter hits, your opponent's not gonna press, because people are already so afraid of things like back one and all of his counter hit launchers. When Steve gets going, people don't want to press. Any sane person isn't gonna press. Anybody that knows what they're doing isn't gonna press. And let's say you're fighting against someone who ducks a lot, you can always just throw this out. It's only -3, so you can move around again, and you kind of create some distance between your opponent. But it's fine, because, you know, unfortunately you are playing someone who has some issues opening your opponent up again. So if they do just block, it's going to be kind of difficult to get in depending on who it is. You can't just always do it again. And it's not the freest thing in the world to do, but people aren't going to press after this spin. This spin is too scary. People are so afraid of getting hit with Alb 2. They're not going to press or anything. Utilize this spin. Close distance with your opponent. Try not to just, in a neutral setting, try not to just see, you know, you're both moving around and then you try to spin to get in, because you can't block. That's kind of the case where kind of running up and dashing at them is better, because at least you still have the capability to block. And don't always run in with 1-2-1. I used to do that a lot, and Shinblade taught me not to do that, because it's very obvious. So kind of pick and choose when you want to go in, and when you do want to go in, mask your spin with a flicker jab, or you can, you know, throw out back one just in case, and then, you know, go into it. The next stance that I want to talk about is this whole flicker stance. I don't know which stance is better out of flicker or peekaboo, because they both do different things. This stance kind of revolves around how do you make the mids work, like flicker one, forward one, doing this. You can play Steve with just his left hand. So when Law says, you know, hey Steve, you know you can kick in fights, right? And Law or Steve is like, I can beat you with one hand. Crazy pause, but Steve is dead ass serious when he says that, because you can't just play Steve with flicker. You know, you have your neutral on block stance, or your neutral on block string that you can jab after, that goes into another neutral on block stance, which then you can just loop this. Now it is kind of, it is a flow chart that can very easily be beaten. Again, most people are kind of afraid to press into Steve, and I utilize this a lot. You can do one jab, this is one down one, and this is one down one, just if you want the inputs. But this string goes under the radar by so many Steve players. This is -6 if you don't go into flicker, but it's neutral if you go into flicker. That's a 6 frame difference, and it's almost a game-changing difference. If they try to press anything 12 frames or slower, they're not gonna take their turn back. So obviously people like Lee can just magic for you out of this, because the flicker jab is 12 frames and everybody can just jab you out of it. But you know, you're in flicker, so you can utilize, you know, your power crush, you can sway, you can back sway. Like, you can play Steve with one hand. You could just use the one option, like 1-1 down 1-1 1-1-1-1 spin, back one, rising one. Like, you can play him with just his left hand. This stance is really good for pressuring people. It's really good for pressuring people and getting a good read on their timing, seeing how impatient they are, because you can delay the fuck out of, you know, his extensions and everything. Peekaboo is something kind of different. This is also a stance where you have to figure out how to make the mids work, because you're revolving around highs and lows. A lot of people tend to sidestep duck after, because, you know, they want to duck this, they want to duck all of this. But this is where this string comes in handy, because you can delay it, which people are going to be looking for you to mash out the mid-high, which I don't know why I don't have hit properties on. But yeah, these first two hits are mid-high. So if you mash it out, that's kind of easy timing. But the rest is mid, and it's all safe, of course. If you hold back, it's all safe. And even if you don't want to hold back, it's only -10. This character is bullshit. But focusing on just the first two hits, you can delay the hell out of this to see if they immediately duck and try to punish you for it. And let's say this counter hits. Oh, I messed up my timing and I got hit with the second hit on counter hit. How much range does this move have? It's all guaranteed on counter hit. The second, third, and fourth hit, it's all guaranteed. And it wall splats. But why do we want to use that string? That string goes into flicker, where you can then, you know, you'll be at -3, so be careful. But you can then go into your flicker pressure, you can go into an empty spin again and go back into Peekaboo and just rinse, repeat. This is good stuff. I don't see Steve players using this. This is how you're supposed to pressure with Steve. You're not supposed to just, you know, just do all of this shit. Like, his pressure is much more intricate than people think. It's kind of like Hwaring, for example. Like, a lot of people think Hwaring is just you press a bunch of buttons and you get infinite frames. That's not that's not really how it works. Hwoarang also revolves a lot around highs when he's pressuring, so it's up to you to decide when to duck or when to step. But Steve is a bit different in that his mids are a lot scarier than Hwoarang's, but Hwoarang's frames are a lot better when his block frames are a lot better when he's pressuring. So that's kind of the difference between the two. But Steve is supposed to be the character that throws out a 9 million hit string and it's safe, so that not only it's safe, it's not even like -5 or anything. Like he can still sway and move around. So like doing stuff like this, it's it's a lot safer than you would expect. But I must let it be known that this is strictly dependent on how your opponent is reacting. If your opponent is just fucking blocking the entire time, that's when you want to start using, his lows or trying to bait out a panic button or something. Don't try to just mash out a turtle. You're not gonna get anywhere. If they're just standing there doing this the whole time, you're not gonna get anywhere. You kind of have to play that a bit differently. But if your opponent if you see that your opponent is actively trying to take their turn back all the time, that's where you incorporate things like, an empty spin, or just throwing out the Alb 2, or delaying your timing on this to make them think that, oh, he just did the first hit. No, he didn't. He did the whole thing, and now I got counter hit and I'm back on the wall. Things like that. That's what Steve does. Overall, his stances are they're not the best. Like, they do, obviously you run the risk of being ducked a lot, but that's when you decide, am I going to incorporate his mids more, or am I going to take that risk of being ducked and hoping that, maybe if they duck the second hit, will the third hit come out fast enough for them to get counter hit by it? Another thing, kind of like a gimmick that Steve players don't utilize enough, is doing a certain move into up back 3. Let's say they block the power crush. Doing up back 3, you're minus 9 after the power crush. So if they try to run up and take the turn back, there's a big chance that you can whiff, or you can make them whiff and you get a launch out of it. Doing things like this into up back 3. It does work. I don't know if they can block after, or I don't know if you can like get away. Like, for example, if he does, like if I do my rising 1, I don't know if he can get away in time. Yeah, so if they do like, well, I mean, I guess it depends on the distance, because Flicker standing 2 has so much range on it. So that's a free launch. If they try to match, that's a free launch. So it is kind of range dependent, but throwing out up back 2 after a certain attack that looks punishable, like, I don't think this works, because you're -6. So if they try to like jab or down 4-1 or something, I mean, shit, let's test it. Okay, so down 4-1 will catch him. Down 4-2 will catch him. Okay. Hello? Steve is broken. This is interesting because it really is range dependent. God, up back 3 is so annoying. But I love it. I love up back 3 so much. But yeah, doing certain strings into up back 3, as you can see, it is very effective if, you know, it's beating your basic, you know, jab down forward 1, down forward 2 options. And this is just a Steve mirror thing. Steve doesn't necessarily have, you know, good range. So playing against someone like Hwaring or Jin, who has, you know, really good range, it might not work as well, but at least, you know, against Steve, doing things like this, it does work. So there's your matchup tip for the day. You can be -6 and up back 3. And then there are some setups that you can do to set up, you know, back 3-2. Like you can use his hop kick, which is -9. I don't know why that didn't connect, but you can do like up forward 1. You can even do out 2 if you're playing like a real masher. I don't know why this isn't working. Trust me, it will. Like that. That's what's supposed to happen. And this is very risky because, you know, if you get stuck doing, you know, this goofy shit, you know, that's an easy hop kick, that's an easy down forward 2, that's an easy skyrocket, that's an easy fucking whatever mid launcher that your character has. It's easy because this is fucking, I think this is launch punishable on block. This is -18 on block, and they're not even blocking it. You're just out here whiffing just nothing, like you're hitting nothing. So do be careful with that. People tend to catch on very quickly. So like if you get hit, like if your opponent gets hit with this one time, they're probably not going to get hit with it again unless you set it up in a different way. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was his punch parry, because there are some good punch parry setups. If you want to be safer than just doing this, like this is really a hard read, but if you want to be safer, you can, you know, throw out up forward 1. Up forward 1 is a good move. It's good for closing distance. It's not like it doesn't do anything on counter hit or anything like that. It is safe. It crushes lows, but yeah, it also does set up the punch parry very well. Can like do a string into the punch parry. This is another like crazy read situation, but if you do back 1-2, for example, or if you do back 1, for example, and you think they're gonna jab interrupt, that is also another setup. Rocket punch also sets up the parry. Those are like the reasonable punch parry setups. Obviously, you know, you can't just do like running 2 and then do a punch parry, but that's like, if you're jabbing after being -6, you're not playing the game right. Yeah, that was just a general overview of my man Fox and Stevenson's stances. Just to give a quick recap, utilize this empty spin. Mask it. What masking it means is hide it behind something. So hide the spin behind a flicker jab, or even 2 flicker jabs, or if you're feeling frisky, you could throw in 3 flicker jabs and then, you know, go into peekaboo after. Or if you don't want to go into peekaboo after, you could just, you know, move around, try to bait out a defensive option from your opponent. Like I say in almost every video, be careful when doing all of this, because none of it is guaranteed. This is Tekken 8. Nothing is guaranteed. If you notice your opponent's not ducking, try not to just spam out the jabs as much. Try to almost make them duck by, like, you know, tickling their kneecaps a bit. And then when you feel they're gonna duck, throw out down forward 1 or throw out back 1-1. And be careful with this, because this is mid-high. They can duck the second hit. And that's when you throw in down forward 1-1, which is -10, but, you know, you can delay the third hit, which is -11. Then you can delay the last hit, or you can go into the last hit, which is -13. But I would just stay safe with this, because you don't want to be -11 or 13, because things at -10 tend to get, you know, unpunished because you know it is a perfect punish. Like you have to jab them like the moment you have to be mashing the jab to punish this. But at -11, you can kind of recognize that, oh, that string is -11. Let me punish it. And then obviously at -13, like say GG, you know. But utilize doing the quick spin into Peekaboo. You can do a double spin into Peekaboo if you want to get like, if we're talking like mask off level masking it. You can be extremely fancy with it and keep going like that. This does well with positioning your opponent too, because you can pick which direction you want to go. So let's say the wall, I want to put him to the wall on my left over there. I hold down and I kind of do a sidestep so I can pressure him and put him on that wall. Or if I want to put him on the other wall, I can hold up and then his back is now at this wall. So minor details make a crazy difference in game, because you never know when, you know, they're gonna press and, you know, you do a double spin and you evade whatever button they press, and now you're in Peekaboo and you can launch them for it. You never know. Enjoy the character, man. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to have fun playing them. Have fun doing the, you know, oh, I'm +4, you wanted to press, stupid. Oh, I'm -6, stupid. Let me get your health. Make yourself enjoy how smooth this character's stance transitions are, because they are very smooth. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you fuckers in the next one.